Hello, hello, hello. I'm Lady Felana, the CEO and founder of Endure Entertainment, the home of clean entertainment with one vision, one goal, to inspire. God has really blessed Endure Entertainment. We've been open for 1 year and God has blessed us with being featured on CBS, NBC, and Fox December 2021. Nominated for the 2022 Gospel Choice Music Awards for Independent Broadcast of the Year. Glory be to God. January 2022, we had our first annual virtual extravaganza. We were blessed by Pastor Jasanya Whitfield, Greg G. Baby Taylor, Marilyn P., Elder Michelle Hinton, and Larry Edwards Jr. Introducing the Endure Entertainment Television Network television personalities were May Rodriguez, Michelle Jackson, Evangelist Corey Thomas, Pastor Michelle Hinton, Prophetess T. Freeman, and yours truly, Lady Felana. All are amazing shows with their own flavor on how to introduce the love of Christ to the world, and that's bona fide talk. Family, Endure Entertainment has reached 18 countries outside of the U.S., and we're syndicated on 18 different podcast directories. You can view our shows on our website at bftm.live. We air our shows live 5 days a week on our website, and you can view our 24 hours a day, 7 days a week television station on our website, bftm.live. Keep us in your prayer, guys. We are certainly praying for each of you. We are Endure Entertainment, the home of clean entertainment with one vision, one goal, to inspire.
Hey, we want to give a shout out to all those that make it possible for us to be seen live on this broadcast. Starting with the Clean Queen, treating you like royalty. We have Digital's custom computer builds, meeting all your electronic needs. Underground t-shirts, being creative as you see fit. Highly Favored Productions, the ministry where music and lyrics come together. Mountain Mike's Coffee House, a small business treating you like family. For sponsorship opportunities, give us a call at 270-986-7996. Hey, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are on God's green earth. I want to thank you for tuning in to I've Got Favor, where it's your time to shine with me, your award-winning host and podcaster, Prophetess T. Freeman. Hey, today is really good. We want to get into this good tea, right? So we're going to talk about what's going on with our children right now. We see there's a lot of things that are breaking out that can cause your children to be really stressed about, their future. We've had some incidents where, once again, there's been shooting in the schoolhouse. We've had another incident where there's been shootings in the grocery store, at another church. I mean, it's just a lot of chaos. And then you hear, we still know that the war that is going on with Ukraine and Russia. And then you have the war that is happening within some of the households. You have dysfunctional family units, or you have the single parent family that's going on, or maybe perhaps your child is in a situation where they're being bullied, either at school or maybe on the internet. So we want to talk about, childhood depression. And in that aspect, I also want to talk about the effects of the trauma of childhood depression, as well as could there possibly be things that you did not deal with in your childhood that were trauma that are now affecting your children's childhood. It's So let's get into that good tea this evening. So, of course, it's the first Friday of the month. So we're going to have one of our permanent therapists on with us, Miss Carol Lothery. So I want to bring her on up so we can get into this good conversation. Guys, do me a favor. Hey, Miss Carol.
How are you
I'm glad
today?
to see you. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. Before we get started in this conversation, guys, post your comments, any questions that you have, any concerns that you might have as far as signs of maybe your child is showing signs of depression, or maybe you're going through a battle with your child. That's what Miss Carol's here for. She's here to answer those questions from a practicum stance for you, to tell you some things that you could utilize or for your benefit in your household. And then, you got me here on the spiritual aspect. But hit that button at the bottom of y'all screen and share, and invite some people in so we can have a good conversation. So, Miss Carol, I wanted to talk about the incidents with the shooting at the school. These were actually, I think the children were, 12 and younger.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you have that conversation with your child and not traumatize them even worse? If your children hear about something like that, where now maybe they're afraid to leave the home and go to school themselves. How do you have this type of conversation with your children?
Well, the first thing we want to do is always make sure that our children know that they're safe, and that safety could mean anything by showing them how much that they're loved by their parents. In the first instances of those going back to those schools and things, it's always good to to take your child physically. You go with the child back to the school and reintroduce them back into that my mind just went blank. But reintroduce back into the environment again. That's the word I was wanting to use, the environment. But we always got to make sure that our kids know that they're safe, and that safety comes from reassuring them that nothing's going to happen, even though this bad thing has happened. That's not the norm for them. We've always got to make sure that our children know that this is not the norm. This is the atypical. It is not something that's going to happen all the time, because we don't want our children to get into that point of being hypervigilant and always looking around to see if somebody's going to walk through the door with a gun or a bomb or something and blow them up. So it's really talking to that child, asking that child what they're feeling. Because most often we don't ask the child, what are you thinking? Because sometimes that child may just have one question, and that one question can relieve him of all the anxiety or the stress that he's having at that moment.
I was going to ask that question. I think you kind of covered it, because I was going to say, do you prepare your children for the possibility of something like that, or is that a bad thing?
I don't know. It goes. When we talk about stress, stress is something that happens to all of us. It's an everyday occurrence. So I may respond to a stressor differently than you would respond to it. So it's kind of indicative as to how that person responds, and even children respond differently to different types of stressors. So it's dependent on that child, whether you go over that with him or not. If you have a highly anxious child, you may not want to do that. Because he may be looking around the corner every time you turn around, which is causing him undue stress. But if you have a child who is pretty laid back, then you can discuss those types of things with him. Definitely, we want to always talk to our kids about stranger danger, making sure you don't go with anybody, or don't talk to strangers, or you don't get into any cars, different things like that. But as far as, the school shootings and stuff like that, that's something that's, has to be gauged by the parent. Do I really want to put my child through that?
Yeah.
So, and I always seek, you can always seek advice from your pastors, or if you've got a mental health person, discuss that with a mental health person as to how you would go about, talking about those different challenges, because that mental health therapist, psychologist, or psychiatrist may know what that child's personality is like and whether or not he can tolerate that.
So I was thinking to myself, could there have possibility of even been signs for the parents or even the teachers to notice, not the latest incidents, but there's the incident before that. I think it was a teenager. I think he's 15 or whatever. He come into the school and his behavior kind of red flag the teachers to start telling the parents, hey, is there things that we as parents should be aware of, or signs that we should pay attention to, that maybe something is stressing or something is changing in our child that they might need to be in some type of therapy, or we need to be watching them?
Yeah, because each child has a different characteristics of how they interact in play, in study time, sleep time. If you notice your child is losing sleep, not eating, isolating themselves, those are very good indicators that something may be occurring. And you might want to talk about, get your child, see if your child will talk about it. If your child is closed off and is not talking about anything, then it's probably a good idea to seek some type of help, because there may be something that somebody has told him to keep a secret, or something that he has witnessed that he doesn't know whether or not he can trust to tell somebody. So it's always know the characteristics of your child. Know what his sleep pattern is. Know what his appetite pattern is. Know how he gets along with other peers, and even what he does in his free time and in his alone time. Just get to know your child. Talk with your child. Become a friend with your child. Not to the point where you forget about being the parent, but always make sure that your child knows that he can always come to you unconditionally about anything.
And I would say, if you notice your child's behavior towards other siblings, could that be a sign too? Like you notice now they're fighting more.
That could be a sign, but then it could be typical sibling behaviors, because siblings fight with each other. I know parents kind of get upset when little Johnny is fighting with little Joey, but it's sometimes that's just a normal pattern. They're gonna have their interactions. However, if those interactions are becoming violent, or to the point of being bullying, and making that child feel very insignificant, or have very low self-image, then that's something that you need to really look at and attend to, and not ignore it. It's always good to say, hey, let's sit down, let's talk about this. What's going on between you and Joey, and what's making you treat Joey this way. And just talking out there. I always avoid the why questions, because the why questions usually assign blame, and your child will shut down immediately. They will not talk once you do that. Why did you do that? Well, that you're attacking me then. So always use a what, how, let's talk about it kind of remark or question.
I was also thinking this too. I noticed with myself, just using myself in incident, for instance, whatever you went through in your childhood, you always try to improve on when you raise your own kids. At least that was my idea. So I think sometimes you can overcompensate. Like, for instance, I thought I was giving my kids each individually enough attention, but my middle son, as he's older now, said he felt like I favored one child over the other. And he's a middle child, just like I am. And it was because he did not have his own identity. He felt like if I do what he does, or if I do what he does, mom and dad will pay attention to me because they like that in this sibling or that sibling. And I got to thinking about that, and I thought to myself, man, you know what? I think he got that from me because I truly didn't discover who I am until, recently. So I always tried to be the good kid. Because my brothers were always doing that. So if we look at ourselves, if we assess what's going on in our life, for instance, some things that we can prevent from maybe causing issues within our children. For instance, when you go through a family that has parents that are battling, or going through a separation or a divorce, how do you make, because that's trauma, it's automatically going to be trauma for a child. How do you make the transition for your child easier so that your bad decisions or your bad choices or what you think is healthy choices for your child, how do you help them to process that? I don't know. Is there a way you can keep it from damaging them? I guess is for the lack of better words.
Well, and I'm going to go back to something that you said before. When you talk about your son and he was doing things, what they call negative attention is better than no attention.
Yeah.
So if I can't get your attention through the positive experiences that I'm having or giving out, then I'm going to do it negatively. So any attention is better than no attention. And then answering your question about, those types of circumstances of maybe a divorce or just some type of upheaval that's going on in the home. It is always good for the parents to sit down with their kids. In my sessions, I always tell our families, you may be having your issues, but the issue is not with the kid, and you have to make sure that that child knows that the issue is not with him. So sometimes you're going to have to set aside your differences between each other and focus on that child. And focusing on that child would be could be something as easy as having a round table discussion of sitting down and saying, hey, this is what mom and dad are going through right now, but it doesn't have anything to do with you. We still love you. You can still come to us. We are still your parents. But, we want to make sure that you know that this does not have anything to do with you. And you have to make sure, you have to show that. We can speak all the words we want to, but if you just talking the talk and not doing the walk, the child is not going to believe you. So if I'm telling you that you're not the problem, but I'm ignoring you, then I'm not going to believe you that I'm not the problem because you're ignoring me. So taking the time out to be with that child, loving on that child, and I tell each parent too, is to make time for that child. Don't try to group your activities all together. If you've got 3 or 4 kids, try to put everybody doing the same thing. Sometimes it's not going to work. Sometimes you need to make time for little Mary whether it's 15 to 30 minutes, and then make time for Joey, whether it's 15 or 30 minutes, but it's individual time so that I know that you love me and that you care about what's going on with me at this moment and at this time. And it's not about picking out whether, oh, she's paying more attention to Henry than she is to me. No, if I'm getting equal time and I'm getting equal space, then I'm going to be more receptive. I'm going to be more positive about what's going on and not think that it's on me, it's all my problem.
I think that was one of my faults is I didn't separate them. I always did everything with them together. So I didn't catch that he felt negated. You have a question. What kind of education or signs can a teacher at school look for if a child is dealing with something?
And like we went back, that varies with that child's characteristics, but most times, if you see a child who's isolating himself, or if you see a child who is bullying, most people don't understand that when a child bullies, it's not because he. It's not always the thought that he wants to be in power of somebody or in control of somebody. It's sometimes that he feels lonely. He just doesn't know how to demonstrate that loneliness, so he's going to bully. Now, there are other times where I want to dominate you because I can't dominate my mother or my father at home, or I can't dominate the situation that is at school. Looking for those types of things, those children that are very hyper vigilant, looking for, every time an incident we call it the startle response. That you drop a book and the kid all of a sudden jumps because something has happened. You look for that, startle responses. Anxiety, the confusion that is going on within that child. If there's a confusion, look at that. But the biggest ones is making sure that looking at whether that child is isolating himself, whether there's bullying going on, whether there's problems going on in the home. If make sure that there's no physical or outward things that are going on, like a child coming in with a black eye, or bruises on unexplained bruises that may occur on his body, because that may indicate that there's physical abuse going on in the home. Let's see. Those are some of the things then there are the other ones, the feeling, the numbness or the grief and loss that are there, unless if you know that child has had a significant loss. And a significant loss doesn't always mean that a person has died. It could be my house burning down, or it could be my mom getting put out of her home. It could be us not having transportation. Just those different types of things. Always know your child, even if you're in the school. Know what your child, know what the characteristic is of a child when they come through the door. Being very aware of that child. So, the child is always outgoing and very very gregarious, and then all of a sudden he's pulling back into a corner and he's not speaking to anyone. He's isolating himself. That's an indicator something's wrong.
So I know one of the things that I don't know. I know my mom did the best she could. My dad just was not there. He was in a bottle. But I had started really suffering from depression about 14. And I spent a lot of time by myself. Nobody paid attention to that. So if you notice you have a child that's withdrawn, because like I said, I don't know if they thought that that's something that I just wanted to do because I was the only girl in the family or what, but nobody ever came and checked on me or had a conversation. Do you think that's, if you do have a child like that, should you just in case have conversations with them, or do you leave them to be that way or what?
In my opinion, I think it's always important to have conversations with your child, whether they're in a depressed mood or whether they're very happy and outgoing. To me, it's always important to always daily have that family time with your child, sitting down. I know my granddaughter, she gets a little irritated sometimes when she comes through the door and I go, "Hey, how'd your day go?" And she goes, "Mama, why are you always asking me that?" And I say, "Because I care. I want to know how your day went. I want to know if there were any problems that we can sit down and we can talk about it and we can solve it for you." Just making sure that child knows that, hey, I don't always have to keep things to myself. I have somebody that I can turn to and I can talk to. Now when I say, "Hey, how's your day going?" She just comes right out and tell me. I get the whole full gambit of what went on, the full, from the day she started in the morning to the time she come home in the evening. So that's one of the starts of making sure that child knows that I can always have somebody to talk to and that I'm going to listen and I'm going to hear. Because oftentimes we ask our child, but we don't listen. We don't hear what they're saying. So it's always important to always make sure that you listen and hear what that child is saying.
I got another question. Can depression look like anxiety?
Yes, it can. It definitely can. All of those things are interwoven with each other. That's why it is very important for people to be able to identify emotions. I often will ask my client, how are you feeling today? Or if there's an event that has occurred, the child would go, "I feel angry." And I go, what is it that you feel angry about? Because I want to make sure that he's feeling angry and not frustrated, because there's a difference. And oftentimes we can't distinguish between our emotions because we use them so interchangeably. If I'm jubilant, I'll say I'm happy. Well, jubilant is much more than happy, because it's out there. It's all the way out there. It's extreme. So knowing what your emotions are, getting in touch with your emotions. Depression is it's under the umbrella of anger. We don't think about that, but when people talk about their emotions, sometimes they'll say, "I'm angry." Like I said, when they may be either frustrated, disappointed, even depressed. So yeah, anxiety and depression can have the same characteristics or the same traits. You just have to be able to distinguish.
That's something that I just learned. I did not know. The verbiage is important, and asking the right questions to get to it. You don't just accept it, so that you make sure that you're getting the right description, so you know how to engage in a conversation with them to get to the root of the issue. Another thing I wanted to talk about is sometimes I know even in broken relationships, you have one parent that tries to friend the children. So can that be damaging? I mean, for instance, if you have a parent that now the house is split up, and one of the parents actually moves the children into their bedroom instead of letting them have their own space, is that healthy? Or having conversations with them like they're an adult?
Again, that if it all depends on the maturation of the child in the what that child can take at that time. I always caution parents that the children really don't need to know your business. You can give them kind of a general overview of Daddy and I are just not getting along right now. We're having problems. But I always feel that it is not acceptable for a parent to go into very explicit details of what went on in their intimate lives with their child, because that's a burden or a stressor put on that child that does not need to be there. Trying to sway that child to your side, eventually that child is going to grow up and they're going to find out that some things were not what you told me. And then you have a child who resents not only the person who left, but also resents you because you didn't tell, you what you told was not always exactly how it went.
And that's what, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, just be very careful about what you disclose. The intimate details of your life between you and your partner are not, for a child to digest or for that child to take over, because they don't need that unnecessary burden.
And I think that's what I was talking about, some of the traumas from from our own childhood affecting our children. I think that was a behavior, that right there was a behavior I carried over. Because one of the things, my mother I was her best friend. At 8 years old, I knew my dad wasn't paying bills, that he was a drunk, that she was carrying everything, and how hard and she was struggling. And when I myself started going through my divorce, I was always telling my kids, well, go ask your daddy because he's the one with all the money. Go ask your dad because your dad's the one that's blah, 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 this and that. I mean, they knew I was angry at him. I was saying things to them that I don't think they should have heard. And even conversations, my mother was doing that with my children. I noticed too. She was saying things about me to my children. So that's what I was saying. If you see signs of this, that you're doing things like that, how do you recover that? How do you?
Well, and it's most people do not take advantage of the opportunity of going to get mental health assistance. It is not shameful to try to find a therapist or a psychologist who can help you through your issues. My recommendation would always be, when you're finding yourself into a situation where you're having difficulty problem solving or coping, then it's probably your best bet to start trying to get a professional to assist you and help you with that. Because they then will sit down and help you to write out a plan to work with issues that may come up in your life, like resolving old feelings that you may have about your spouse or significant other. I know when I got a divorce from my ex-husband, I made it, and it was difficult. I'm not going to sit here and say that, it was so easy for me, because it was not. It was not. Very, very difficult for me to not talk to my two children about what was going on in our lives. They knew that we did not have, we could not communicate with each other, and they knew that we had irreconcilable issues, but they didn't really know what those issues were, because I did not feel that it was necessary for them to know. What I did feel necessary for them to know is that mommy and daddy could not live together anymore, and that it had nothing to do with them. It had everything to do with mom and dad. And I did not say anything bad about dad. Now, believe you me, it took God. That wasn't me. That was God that kept me from bad mouthing, because if it was all left to me, I'd have said any and everything I could about him. But prayer and knowing the word of God kept me, humbled enough where I did not feel like I had to spill all of that out on my child or on my children, so that they could in turn love me and hate him. That was not my goal. I'll let them make their own decisions, and they have, made their own decisions of what what parent, they want to be around, I encourage them. I always talk to their father, but because of my faith, I was able to do that. But for those that don't have that faith, you may want to get a counselor or a therapist that can help you to work through that, and make plans to strategies to when it gets too tough for you or too rough for you, how to get rid of those negative thoughts that I may be having, or those negative feelings that I may be having, and not spill it out on my child, because that's not where we want to go. That's not what we want to do.
You got another question. Can it be traumatizing if a parent is trying to live vicariously through their child?
For that child, yes, it is. Yes, it is, because they've always got to meet your expectation. And if they don't meet your expectation, then they feel like they're the failure. And also, if they're not meeting your expectation, then you, oftentimes, if you are living vicariously through your child, you're going to make sure that child knows that they're not meeting your expectation. You're going to make sure that child knows that he's not doing what he needs to do in order to please you or make your life better. Because I'm just trying to tell you so that your life can be better. And that's something we tell ourselves, when in fact it's not. I'm saying this to you so that I can make myself feel better.
So is it okay to set boundaries? Because like I said, I know when we think that we've had the most atrocious childhood, we try to compensate to make our child's, life a whole lot better. So, for instance, my family, we were poverty mindset.
Mm-hmm.
We were low income family. Like I said, I come up with a lot of dysfunction. So overcompensating for the things that we didn't give, buying your kids a lot of stuff, and parents that do that. They put their kids are in the latest name brand stuff, but mom and dad don't have a car. Is that healthy for the child if you give them everything that they want and have no established boundaries? You don't put any boundaries on them. You don't put no restrictions on them. You just let them be little adults or grown-ups. They can lock the door and tell you to get out the room. Don't come in my room. Is that okay?
It is not okay. And it's just like setting, I'll put it in terminology of where it's easy to understand. It's like putting a big old feast out there and then just telling that child you can eat all you want, and then when that child eats all that he wants and comes up with a stomach ache, you're looking at that child as, why didn't you stop when you was full? You told me to eat everything I wanted. You said, you didn't say, just eat this or this. You didn't put any boundaries out there for me. So boundaries are always important. If you don't set boundaries, the children or the adult, whomever it is going to push limits. And then it's always going to be back on you. Well, you didn't tell me that this was how you were feeling, or you didn't tell me that I shouldn't do this or that. So I always set boundaries.
So how do you do that and not? I know I'm trying to ask you how to parent. Have a balance where your child doesn't feel like they're being smothered. Because I know there's some kids that I know a friend, for instance, that has a child who she sits and tries to have conversation with this child, but the child doesn't even interact with her. But when the child goes away, she belittles the parent to their friends, their siblings, or what have you. How do you balance that relationship? Because now it seems like she's always disciplining the child and never And the way and she still gives her things, you know what I mean? Just over to me does she. I punish you, but I take the punishment away quickly.
And there's a difference between appropriate consequencing or appropriate discipline as to punishment. Because punishment is exactly what it says. Punishment means I'm going to teach you something, whether you like it or not. Appropriate parenting or appropriate discipline helps that child to see the boundaries, also see what's right and what's wrong. Punishment is always punitive. It never. It's very rare that a child learns anything from punishment. So how do you will learn something from if you sit down and you talk with them? And this is the reason why I'm giving you this consequence. Also allowing the child to help distinguish what type of consequence he wants to have. Giving choices to a child. Oftentimes when I used to work in a juvenile correction facility, it was hard to get the clients to see that some of the behaviors that they were exhibiting were inappropriate. So you kind of give them choices. If you do this, this, and this is what's going to happen. However, if you do this, this, and this is what's going to happen. And you let them choose. Now, what choice do you want here? What is it what's the outcome? What do you want to see happen here? And more often than not, the child is going to choose the more appropriate one. And more often than not, he's going to choose the one that's going to benefit him the best. So
that sounds so biblical. That's kind of how God deals with us. Like he gives us, look, I'm telling you, this is what has happened. And this was the consequences of that behavior. So don't do this so you don't end up with this behavior. But if you do this, this is the consequences. But we don't see it that way.
And the person who wrote that, it gives them, it empowers them. That's correct. It does. It gives them a sense of, I've got a choice here. You're allowing me to live my life, and I'm not always being told what I need to do. I'm being given a choice as to what I need to do. Now, understand, if you make the negative choice, there's going to be negative consequences. So if you choose to, if your bedtime is at 11 o'clock and you choose to stay up to 2 o'clock in the morning, when 6 o'clock comes in the morning for you to get up to go to school, you're going to be tired. That's your consequence, but you're still going to go to school.
That makes sense. So in dealing with maybe you have a child that's acting out, like I said, because of depression, and it seems like, do you suggest, if you can't get through having conversations with them, that you do some type of therapy?
Oh, yes.
With the child?
Depression, I feel like, and there may be some others that don't agree with me, but I always feel like, as a therapist, that if your child is depressed, and if he's clinically depressed, he really needs to be under some mental health guidance. He needs to have either a psychologist or a therapist, and then maybe even psychiatric assistance through maybe even medication management.
How can you tell that sign, though? How do you know they're just not having a bad day?
There is a difference between being sad, because sad doesn't last always. I can be sad today and then happy tomorrow. When you are clinically depressed, it means you in a low place all the time. It doesn't matter if something happy comes in your life. You may respond with but you're back where you were again. You never get up out of that low place. You're always so low that you can't see a way out. You're in that hole, and you can't climb out of it.
That's a good explanation. Another question? If a child dealt with untreated depression or trauma, what does it look like in adulthood?
Well, I mean, it's you may not be you may not be
it looks like me.
As an adult, you may not be doing video games all the time, or wearing black clothes all the time. But sometimes the characteristics or the traits are very, very similar. Again, isolating yourself. Very low in adults. It's very low self-esteem and self-image. Anxiety that's there. I'm trying to think of some others.
I know some adults that do get into that gaming.
The difficulty in concentrating. Those are different things that go on in an adult. What depression or trauma looks like in an adult. These are the things that you're going through.
Changing jobs
as adults.
Frequently?
Oh, yeah. Very inconsistent behavior. Shopping to the point where you're putting yourself in debt. I'm trying to think of other things too.
Being promiscuous.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Looking for love in all the wrong places, as the song says. Being very promiscuous, or just the shame and confusion that is there. Neglect. You may even neglect yourself.
Amen. He says this hits home, really very empowering. I think it is something that. Thank you for saying that. We appreciate you.
Yeah, we do.
That is truth, because a lot of Miss Carol, I noticed that a lot of the stuff that I did not deal with face in my childhood, as an adult, I kind of carried over into my relationship, which inadvertently, without me realizing it did affect my children. Mm-hmm. I didn't deal with the anger, my daddy not acknowledging me, not having my dad tell me that he loved me and things like that. I never heard my dad say that until right before he died. So, like you said, I knew I had my highs where I would have really good hours. I was happy, I was excited, and then I would have my anxiety or frustration moments where I would go spend money. I would shop because the euphoria from the shopping. And then Miss Carol, I was one of them girls that left tags on clothes and took them back. I knew how to write a check to cover a check, to write a check before they started this electronic stuff.
Overeating is another thing, or
drinking,
or anorexia. That's another condition. Compulsive eating or binging. Those are all forms of people not being able to deal with. I'm sorry.
Cutting. The cutting,
the cutting behaviors, that all goes with self-esteem and acceptance, or the feelings of nobody loves me, and again, that's something that should be really should be seen through either a psychologist or a therapist to help find coping and problem-solving mechanisms to overcome. One thing that we teach our kids sometimes that can be very effective for the kids to replace the pain, because what they're wanting to do is find something to replace the pain that they're going through.
Right.
That will distract you. The cutting will distract the pain that's going on in my head and in my heart. So I've got to focus on the cutting that that pain that I'm getting from the cut right then. So we may do little things that kind of seems odd, like wearing a rubber band. If you see a person sometimes wearing a rubber band, they might take that rubber band and pop that rubber band to replace that cutting behavior. But you need to really go to a mental health specialist in order to learn how to resolve those issues. What's going on? Why am I seeking to cut myself? What's going on? Because like I said, a lot of people often find themselves doing that in order to escape the pain that's going on in their home life or personal life. And it's easier for me to do it this way than to deal with what's going on inside my head or inside my heart.
And like I said, I know that was my way of to covering up, like even the promiscuity. I was doing that just to give me a moment of false, like somebody wanted. I had something somebody wanted. I had value at that moment, and then when it was over, I would feel horrible.
Mm-hmm.
I know for me, it did take me several years before I found a really good therapist to help me see, because I was always giving everybody else affirmation and accolades, but I never seen anything good, no self value, no self-worth in myself. So how do you now teach your kids that? How can you love your kids properly? How can you love anybody properly if you don't even know your self-worth and self-value?
Mm-hmm.
We have another question. How do you incorporate spirituality with children dealing with trauma?
And that's good, because what I have been taught by my pastors, because I take what I learned from my church, because I do secular therapy as well as Christian based therapy as well. And for those that are seeking Christian based therapy, I always refer to the Bible. The Bible tells you that there is nothing that the Bible can't tell you to how to interact with yourself. It tells you everything. You just need to look. Most people think, when I talk about dispelling the negative thoughts or controlling your appetites and stuff like that, knowing those Bible verses and where to go in the Bible and get that. Because like when I'm talking about negative thoughts, I always think of Philippians 4:8. And it said, think on these things, whatsoever things are good, whatsoever things are,
True. That's my verse.
going to that. God tells you what to think of.
Right.
So sitting down with that child and it doesn't have to be an hour, sitting down with that child, depending on its age, starting anywhere between 5 to, 5, if they're young, 5 minutes of sitting down and going over a Bible verse with that child, and then letting them know what God said about that verse and what God said about you within the context of that verse. Because I always make sure my daughters know that they are fearfully and wonderfully made.
Amen.
And that's in Ephesians. I always make sure that they know that you are a work of art. God made you this way,
Amen.
So just sitting down with them and teaching them the word, and then getting the word in there and instilling the word into them. And like I said, it doesn't have to be long and arduous. 5 minutes with a 3 or 4 year old, 5-year-old, maybe 30 minutes to an hour with your 15 or 16-year-old, 17-year-old. Just getting the word in them is what's important.
Amen. Miss Carol, this was great, T. This was good conversation. I wish we had more time, but we're running out of time. Guys, if you have any questions, concerns, the conversation can continue. You're always welcome to leave me a message you under this post. If you want to come back and watch it again, you can leave me a message. You can inbox me. And Miss Carol is on every first Friday of the month. We can continue the conversation. If you yourself are struggling, if you find yourself in a dark place where you feel like there's no hope, you feel hopeless, let me let you know this. There is a God that is concerned and who cares about you. He said it in his word. Jeremiah tells you that God formed you with a purpose and a plan, and that's to give you hope in the future. So he doesn't want you to feel hopeless. He doesn't want you to feel without value. He loves you and he is concerned. And there is nothing wrong with having Jesus and a therapist. Jesus himself was a counselor. So it does not make you imperfect. It does not make you awful. It doesn't make you crazy. It doesn't make you none of those negative things. That don't even sound like God. So you just got to make the choice to get up and make a phone call. Whatever you need to do to get your mind wrapped around what God says about you.
And the one thing that I wanted to say before I close is that make it a point to sit down and talk with your child daily about what's going on in their life. I mean, it doesn't have to be a long period of time. It can be 5 minutes. Like I said, my granddaughter Melina, was like, I didn't want to talk about it the first time, but now it's a habit and it becomes a habit. So sit down and talk with your child about what his day is like, what he's thinking, what's going on, what's your plan?
I mean, even if you got to sit down and play a video game with them, cards, whatever they're into, to get them to open up to you, always make yourself available. Parents, we've got to get better at that. We have got to stop pushing our kids away, because that's what I did. I would push them out the bedroom when they would want to come up and talk. But that's why we've got to be healthy, so we can be healthy for them. All right. So let's deal with our childhood trauma so that it doesn't inadvertently affect our children, and pay attention. Learn your children's behaviors and their characteristics so that you can help them walk through this process, because the world is in a crazy state. Amen. And all is not lost. Once again, Carol, we thank you. I am so glad that you're doing better. Guys, if you still have comments or questions, please leave them in my inbox. I will make sure to pass them on to Miss Carol, and we will get you some help. We can refer you, give you 1-800 numbers, whatever you need. There is an agency that can assist you. Don't think because you don't have money you can't get assistance. That's an untruth. There is plenty of agencies that are out there that can help you. So reach out to somebody, your pastor, a close friend, but reach out to somebody. And like I said, my inbox is always open. This is what I do. Miss Carol too. So we love you. I thank you for tuning into I've Got Favor, where it's your time to shine with me, your hostess, Prophetess T, and Miss Carol, our monthly therapist, who's on every Friday, first Friday of the month. Make sure you guys tune in next week, and have a blessed and prosperous week.
Bye.
We thank you for tuning in to I've Got Favor, where it's your time to shine with Prophetess T.